Hi, everyone. Welcome to the CURES Show, where we explore the cutting edge of wellness. Certainly a lot of talk in the adult space about how to manage stress, but how do we actually teach stress management to our kids? Dr. Laura Saunders from the Institute of Living is here to tell us ways that parents can really help navigate this, because children are also facing overwhelming stress right now. Welcome, Dr. Saunders.
Thank you for having me, Kara.
I think when we were growing up, parents always said, oh, kids don't have, what are you, a kid? You don't have any stress. But we've certainly changed our thoughts about that, probably in a good way. Let's be clear here. You would say children are experiencing stress at unprecedented levels?
Yeah, I think most adults and children are experiencing stress at unprecedented levels. Really, parents overwhelmingly report concerns about their child's overall development, including their social life, their academics, and their emotional health. So I think that the well-being of children is certainly at the forefront in the minds and hearts of many parents. Now, I don't like to totally, denigrate stress and anxiety. Right, anxiety is that sometimes excessive worry, because sometimes it can be motivating. So we don't want to completely eliminate stress. And remember, even positive things can be stressful. So, starting a new sport, or, starting a new activity, or, in some of the bigger transitions, going from being in school to starting the summer, right? Those can be stressful events. So we need to learn ways to manage them and not eliminate them or avoid them.
So, do kids understand stress?
I don't think that they understand it in the way we as adults and parents understand it, because remember, we have life experience. We have life experience that has helped us identify the kinds of things that are worrisome or stressful. Like, for some people, it's the start of the school year that is very stressful, or the winter months, right, which bring in a lot of darkness and cold. Like, we know as adults, because we have so much life experience, the things that are triggering for us or cause us stress. But our children, and that's based on their developmental level, don't have that same life experience. So they sort of fall into things or fall into patterns. And, we as adults and parents need to help them identify those.
And that's really a trick, right? We really want to help our kids identify, not always fix it. So you want us to talk to them. So number one, you say, be available, but part of this is timing, right?
It is timing, and being available means being available. So it's not this, and with your child talking is not being available. That is just, and look, we're all guilty of it, right? This is not about blaming anyone. This is about becoming more mindful that our children need some amount of time and attention. And in fact, our time and our attention are the two greatest gifts that you give your children. So notice the times when your child's more likely to be willing to talk. For some kids, it's at bedtime. Spending a little time with them before they go to bed is a time when they release some of their thoughts and ideas or worries. For some, it's before dinner. For some, it's driving in the car. So it's being more aware and mindful of the times that your kids are more likely to open up and talk.
So this is important that you say we start the conversation. We don't necessarily rush in to fix a problem. So what does it look like to start the conversation?
Starting the conversation can be something as simple as sharing something yourself. Oh, I noticed today when I was driving to work that I felt really happy because the sun was out, right? And sometimes on days where it's more gray and cloudy, I feel like more heaviness in my chest, right? So in that fairly simple statement, what you've done is you've identified what your own kind of points of comparison, which, I feel better when it's sunny out. Sometimes I feel heavy on the inside or in my chest when it's dark and rainy out. So you're making the association between where in your body you feel things. And that's what you're also teaching. And so then a statement like that, and that's, it's a fairly benign statement. You're not revealing a whole heck of a lot about oneself. You're not sharing all your personal details, but a statement like that can really open up the door for your child to say, yeah, I feel better on sunny days too. Or no, I love the rain. I love it when it's cold and rainy or snowy, right? Whatever it is. So it opens up that door of conversation. The flip side to that is allowing your child to just share things spontaneously. So it's not like you have to, fill the entire time, because silence can be good as well, because that allows your young person to just share whatever might be on their mind.
Do boys and girls cope with stress differently? And does the stressed out kid look different by gender?
So what I would probably designate is that the stressed out child looks different based on their temperament. So the temperament is to children what personality is to adults. Temperament is that style of relating to the world where, some individuals are more easygoing or more difficult or more impulsive or more, needing soothing or soothing themselves. So I would look more at your child's temperament, because your child's temperament, which they've had really since birth, often is predictive of how they will manage stress. So if we did like a general category of internalizers versus externalizers, so internalizers tend to hold on to things more, not share as much, kind of dig within themselves, become more quiet, more withdrawn. Externalizers tend to be more outwardly emotional and more kind of maybe angry, or really putting their stress out onto the world around them.
Yeah, and part of this would be just listening, right? I'm going to be guilty of this as a mom. I might listen to something that my kids are going through, and immediately my mind will be like, I just interviewed Dr. Laura Saunders. I know how to fix that. We need to do da, 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 da. And despite the fact that you do give us good information, you would say it's actually not effective to start talking about how to fix it.
Look, we all want to do right by our children. We, again, have a lot of life experience. The great majority of parents just want to be helpful. However, when we just jump right in and try to fix things all the time, it does not give your child the emotional space to come up with their own solutions or to try to fix it themselves. I would say that that's also on a developmental spectrum. So younger children do need more intervention and support and structure to help fix things. But as your child gets older, they need to come up with some of those things themselves. So it starts with what we call active listening. So really listening to whatever your child might be sharing. They're very worried about a particular class, or they're really having a difficulty with a student at school, someone who seems to be bothering them or teasing them. So it's being, like we call being curious, right? Non-judgmental. Well, any thoughts on how you might want to handle that? And they might say, no, I have no idea. Okay, would you like some input from me? Because I have some ideas. No, I actually don't want your input. Okay, well, I'm letting you know that I have some ideas. Should you want my help and support, just let me know, right? So it's putting it out there. It's not saying, forget it, you're on your own. But listen, I have some ideas. Let me know if you're interested in hearing some. And they might say, yes, I'm interested, and then say, no, I'm not interested. So it's really kind of being more open and curious.
Okay, so then you wouldn't go and go, well, okay, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I just interviewed Dr. Laura Saunders, and she says you should take a walk when you're doing this. And actually, you need to have some protein with your meal because you're probably having a blood sugar crash. Like, that's the wrong approach.
Well, again, it comes from an intention of being very helpful.
Overly
However,
helpful.
We want our children to start to problem solve a little bit on their own. And so, often what happens is you start going to fix it, and then you see them sort of emotionally shut down, or, as they get to be older, they're like, I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, I don't care. No,
so,
I don't want to hear it. I already told you I don't want to hear it. So we should actually listen to that?
Yeah, we should, because as long as it's done respectfully, of course, because they need to figure these things out themselves, right? We've talked about helicopter parenting or lawnmower parenting. There's all sorts of different terms out there. But I like to open the door. Listen, I have some ideas on how you might want to handle that. Let me know. And if they, and now, really, it's hard for me too. I've got a lot of good ideas on how to manage things, but I will tell you, my kids, mine are both college age at this point, they often don't want to hear it. So I have to just hold on to it. And, or they might circle back at a later point and say, well, what do you think I should do in this situation? Ooh, and I think, they're asking for my opinion. Now I get to, jump in there. So, but that's hard, right? And I'm acknowledging that's hard because, right, as adults, we do have a lot of good ideas and we do have a lot of life experience we want to share.
So if your child is experiencing considerable stress, then you might need another level of help. So what does that look like? Because we might be noticing that they're melting down all the time and they just think, well, that's just how they are. They have a low frustration tolerance, or I don't know, they're being such a baby. Why are you melting down all the time? But so how do we know if this stress is to the point that we need help?
The guideline that I use is it hindering their functioning? Is it causing enough concern that they're resisting going to school every day because there's some stressor at school that I'm not sure what it is. I think I might know, but now they're resisting going to school, or now they don't want to go to lacrosse or soccer practice anymore. They don't want to go to their club. They don't want to leave the house on the weekends, or they're sleeping excessively, right? You're seeing signs and symptoms. And we're not just talking about a day or two. I want to look at patterns that are lasting a little bit longer. We all need to manage and adjust to stress, and we all might have a bad couple of days. But it's more concerning when, now it's been several weeks, and I'm seeing that this is now hindering their functioning, or it's really impacting their ability to, do whatever previously was enjoyable for them. I do often like to start with the school, reaching out to school support personnel, or to an elementary school, reaching out to a teacher and saying, I've noticed that my child's really resisting going to school in the morning. Are you seeing anything during the day? So I like to partner and talk with certainly teachers, because our teachers are some of the hardest working individuals out there, and also really get some support. Sometimes talking to other parents, right? Mm-hmm. Finding out from other parents what trends they see as well.
So, there's also stress relievers, and I guess we'll have to talk about how we approach this. I like that you said what part of it is we just need to learn how to listen better, or hey, when I'm having a really bad day, some of the best thing that I can do is go to bed early. I know you talk about sleep being important, but some of these lifestyle triggers could really help them be able to become more resilient, right? Like, number one, I know you say we cannot underestimate the importance of good sleep, which is a lot more for kids than it really is even for us.
Right. The low-hanging fruit in some of these situations is sleep and nutrition, right? Sleep and nutrition are the two biggest factors that affect mood and energy. So, going at it from, sleep and basic nutrition, getting some activity level in, it's not all about the video games, and, getting some time outside. The weather's nicer. We have unseasonably warm temperatures. It's lighter out, into the evening. Getting some time outside, doing some activities. Social connection is really huge. That can be a great stress reliever, even for young kids, because it gives them someone to talk to, or just a distraction.
Yeah. So sometimes for kids, they're more resilient than we think. So just giving them a little bit of an outlet or something could shift their mood.
Giving them an outlet. I mean, it's developing skills, and so much of what we want to do as parents and as caregivers is help our children develop skills, so that as they become teens and young adults and full grown adults, they have skills to manage whatever comes their way. So the more we help them build skills, so that's that balance between wanting to help and support them, do things with them or for them, but then eventually developmentally stepping back and letting them do more things on their own.
So let's talk about mindfulness, meditation. If I was doing an interview for adults, that's the number one thing. The reason why some 10 years ago I started a mindfulness meditation practice is because a million experts said how important it was. And I thought, oh, I better give this a try. And I do know that it's helped me. But when you get to kids, now maybe young ones, I guess we can model that for really little ones. But once you get those middle school, teen years, and we know this is going to help them, and we're trying to introduce what us adults know is important, like, hey, let's use the Calm app, or hey, let's do some mindful breathing. And you might get a lot of resistance about that. How do we handle the fact that we kind of know some strategies that might really help them with them not being willing to use them?
I think it's modifying strategies so that they are effective for your child based on, again, their age and development. How I might do something as an adult, how I might do mindfulness as an adult might be very different than, as a 5 or 10 or 15-year-old. There's ways to mindfulness, or, take some space, or as opposed to just sort of sitting and kind of meditating, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can do mindfulness practice on a walk.
Mm-hmm.
You can do mindfulness practice listening to a song, right? Listening to music.
Mm-hmm.
There's ways to do it that, would work better for young people than it might work for adults. There's ways to be mindfully eating, right? Or, you can mindfully chew a piece of gum, and you can focus on your 5 senses. You can focus on how something tastes, or how something feels, or how something smells, or, what you see. So you can do things that developmentally work better in terms of your, for children than how it would be for an adult.
So especially kids who have other conditions, maybe it's ADHD, maybe they're on the spectrum, or maybe they're facing anxiety, depression, there is always that medication question. And I just want to bring it up. I know that's probably could be a whole nother episode, but sometimes if you've reached a point where we're beyond they're not bouncing back, and we're noticing problems, and you go to the pediatrician, the first thing that might happen after these skills for, surveys for a long period of time, they might say, okay, let's try something. Let's do a medication trial, whether that be an antidepressant, or for ADHD, a stimulant, or something like that. What's your advice for parents? Because I know some are really nervous about that, but there's also a lot of research. I was one of those parents that, oh gosh. But there's also a lot of research that sometimes those interventions could really be game changers and don't have to be forever, right? How do we decide?
So if your child is struggling, right? And struggling can really have a very kind of wide definition. And again, it's hindering their functioning. They're not enjoying activities they used to enjoy. They don't want to leave the house on the weekends. They're just not themselves. It's been going on for a protracted period of time. Again, not just a couple days, but we're talking weeks or maybe even months at some point. You go to I always start with a pediatrician, because they're the frontline provider for children and teens, and you ask for a recommendation, and sometimes the recommendation is, here's a mental health provider, here's a psychologist or clinical social worker, and some offices now have integrated care. They have someone on staff, and that's even more of a huge benefit, or an integrated health system. Also, they often have lists of providers. It might be that the pediatrician says, let's try a trial on a medication. It could be a stimulant medication. It could be an antidepressant medication. If your child's been struggling with anxiety and depression for a longer period of time, there are a lot of medications that are pretty well researched. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't also use strategies, because medications kind of like take the edge off. It doesn't completely change. I think parents are often worried that it'll change their child's personality or make them more dull. That's generally not the case. But medication alone doesn't really do the trick. You still need to do things to help yourself and use skills.
Right, so pills and skills, and a trial, those are things you would look out for too if you start a stimulant that could relieve a lot of stress at school, if maybe they're coming home and they got to that age where things are really difficult and they have some attention issues. That medication might be a game changer, but at the same time, I think a good pediatrician, beware, right? If they would tell you, if you notice that your child's not eating ever, the appetite is really bad, or they're really like seem dulled and glazed over, that's not normal. You should actually have a different dose or a different medication so that parents can kind of navigate that, I guess.
Yes, and often these are dialogues that you have with your provider, and because we want something to bring out the best in your young person. So trying a trial of medication can be helpful, but at the same time, it's not the fix all. It doesn't change everything. You still need to use skills, and it's feedback from your child that was helpful or that wasn't helpful, or yes, it makes me feel better. And a lot of these medications are subtle. They're not, it's not like you're a changed person in a day. It's much more subtle over time. And so it's not like every couple hours saying, do you feel better? Do you feel better? Right? It's looking at it more on a long-term scale.
How important is it to shield our stress from our kids, or vice versa? Do we be honest about it? I mean, I think parents carry a lot of guilt, but they're like, oh, my kid is probably acting out or acting this way because we're going through a divorce or a job change, or, they're seeing or hearing too much because we're stressed out.
So that's a balance. And I don't usually like to use the word balance, because things are never totally in balance. They're all, they're in a rough state of homeostasis.
A rhythm.
So there's an amount of information that you need to share in a given situation that provides basic information, but is not bordering on becoming burdensome, right? So if the adults in the house are going through a separation or divorce, and there might have been a period of conflict for a while, and the children feel that tension, right? It's finally acknowledging this is what's happening, but not using your child as a sounding board, like, oh, you wouldn't believe what your father's done today, or you wouldn't believe what your mother's doing, right? It's not using them as a sounding board. It's not giving them a lot of the details, but identifying and acknowledging the situation so that it helps them label, that's what's happening. It may be uncomfortable, it may be unpleasant, but it puts a label and a name to it.
Okay. Time and attention, let's go back to that. You said the greatest gifts you can give your child are time and attention. So I love that, because those are free. I know different days we might wish we were doing a better job, but time and attention are really so important. So I guess it's important to let parents know also that their kids may be reacting, but you're not ruining them. I think right? We get fearful, like, oh my gosh, have I just traumatized my kid because I yelled at them, or because there's been a divorce, or what can you say to parents so they're not going to be so stressed out about stressing their kids?
Each day we have the opportunity to start fresh, right? We can create an environment where we are a little less reactive ourselves, maybe a little bit more patient, maybe a little bit more attentive. And we're not talking about massive change and massive overhauls. It's just doing one thing. It's doing one small thing in a day that helps you step towards being a better, or sometimes just a good enough parent. We're all dealing with things, right? We're sort of hopefully coming out of a global pandemic, which changed the landscape for so many of us. So the more we can sort of reset each day and say, okay, this is one thing that I want to do today to help myself, because that's ultimately helping my children. It's about the small, subtle changes that we can make. It's not about doing massive overhauls. It's about being a little bit more gentle with yourself, trying to do your best. It's okay to be corrective, to say, listen, I'm sorry, the way I handled that situation was not good for me and clearly not good for you, and I apologize, right? Because you're modeling corrective action. You're modeling acknowledging your role, taking responsibility, and then apologizing and moving on and making change.
So right, that repair is super important. Just like we said, time and attention is super important. When we make a mistake, correcting ourselves and explaining that we made a mistake is actually healing for the kids and less stressful. Maybe that's going to help release their stress.
Yeah, right. It's how we model. Listen, I made a mistake. I apologize. I'm communicating that. But then it does needs to sort of roll into a little bit of behavior change, because you make the same mistake every hour. Your apology's pretty hollow. So you want to try to work on that corrective action. But acknowledging, as parents, we are under so much stress and pressure. So trying to do the little things for ourselves, sleep and nutrition, are the low-hanging fruit, and that's what helps us feel a little bit better about ourselves.
Right. Even modeling that and saying, I did not handle myself well. Now, you know what? I didn't sleep well. I'm guessing that's why I just lost it on you. I haven't been sleeping well at all this week, so I'm more reactive. Having those conversations actually help our kids, so we can correct it, and we actually are teaching them by kind of being good to ourselves. I know moms especially with I don't have time to do any of that. I've got kids and I've got this, but sometimes it's doing the time to do the only thing that matters. You are helping your kid by filling your cup.
We have to fill our own emotional buckets, and that's how we're better parents. It's not being, completely self-serving, but doing little things for ourselves, socializing a little bit, reconnecting with our partner. It's the little things that we do that help fill our emotional bucket and make us better people and better parents.
In our final 2 minutes, I'm wondering, I haven't asked you this question all the times you've been on CURES, but a lot of people are into reading parenting books, and I'm wondering, are there any ones that you really think are worth it, or advice, so that people can explore this more?
So the book that I recommend all the time is very old, and it's How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk by Faber and Maslish. And there's been some iterations of it, because what it really talks about is communication and listening, that the changes that you can make, things that you have control over, right? I don't have control over big environmental changes, but I do have control over the way I conduct myself, the way I might listen, the way I might communicate. And sometimes it's the more subtle changes. I mean, there are lots of good books out there that I probably just can't list off the top of my head.
Yeah. How to talk so kids will listen, and how to listen so kids will talk. Okay. All right. So we've learned a lot here, and the bottom line is kids can be getting very stressed right now. So being able to help them navigate it, just like we're trying to help ourselves navigate it, those are all important skills. And time, attention, and good listening. We can all do that. We'll end on that. Those are all things we can wake up and do tomorrow.
Small changes is what we're going for here.
Yes. Dr. Laura Saunders from the Institute of Living with Hartford HealthCare. Thank you so much for your wisdom and your time.
Please take care, Kara.
You too. And for more information on the cutting edge of wellness, we have conversations on parenting, on natural health, on ways to just make life better. You can follow the CURES podcast, subscribe, and leave a review. We would love that. Follow me on social media at Kara Sundlin. I like to share this content there. Have a great day, everyone, and be well.